Hello and welcome. This is Introduction to Meditation. We are in week 9. Congratulations, you made it. Week 9. That means you're pretty keen. A few people didn't make it to week 9. Quite a lot of people didn't make it to week 2, but you're still here in week 9, and for that, I am incredibly grateful. So let's start out with a meditation. Just in case this is your first time, what we're going to do is we're going to do 3 meditations tonight, and I'll do some talking. The most important piece of this is not the talking. I hope it's vaguely interesting and educational and helpful, but primarily what we're getting together to do is to meditate. We're going to do 3 meditations tonight, and the last one is one we haven't done in this series so far. So there'll be a new one at the end. If you've been to my classes before, then you'll have certainly seen something like this before. But if you're new, then yeah, so we'll do, the first 2 meditations will be similar, and then the third one will be different. And all I'd say is just do your best. You've shown up. That's the hard part. You logged in. You clicked the button. That's the hardest part, believe it or not. So let's do the meditation. So I invite you to sit up straight. The general instruction is to be comfortable, but not too comfortable. If you're too comfortable, you'll sort of just doze off and fall asleep probably. And while sleep is wonderful, it's just not what we're doing right now. Hopefully you'll sleep really well later tonight. But for now, we're going to try meditating. So that requires a little bit of attention and focus. So in this tradition, in the way I was taught it, there is an emphasis on comfort. So we're not trying to manage the pain. If you need to move, but able to hold concentration. Okay, all that said. Now take a nice deep breath in, all the way in, filling the lungs. And let it all the way out, emptying the lungs completely. And once again, take a nice deep breath in, but this time hold it at the top for a moment. And then let it out very slowly, almost as slowly as you can. Starting to pay attention to this breathing thing. And when you get to the bottom of that breath in your own time, let's do that one more time. Take a nice deep breath in, holding it at the top. And once again, letting it out very slowly. Just noticing your body, noticing where you're holding tension, perhaps in your shoulders, in your hips, or even in your face. And then when you get to the bottom of that breath, just allowing your breathing to return to normal. And I invite you to close your eyes unless you'd rather keep them open. And if you're keeping them open, just lower your gaze and soften your gaze slightly. So allowing the breathing to return to normal. And just placing your attention very gently, just on the inhale and on the exhale. You may want to focus very specifically on that sensation just as it enters the nostrils or on the lips. Just allowing your attention to rest there, allowing everything else to fall away. And you might already notice your mind trying to go off in different directions. Think about the meditation, wondering if you're doing it right. you are. Just noticing perhaps what the mind is doing. And then very gently, we're not fighting the mind, we just keep redirecting our attention back to this moment, this breath. We just do that over and over. The mind is going to take your attention away from time to time. That's fine. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. When you notice that's happened, that's a really important moment in meditation, noticing that your mind took you somewhere. And then the next really important moment is redirecting back to this breath right now. And just starting again, noticing this breath. And we'll do this for about 10 minutes. We're a few minutes in, just to remind you to be very gentle with yourself. When you notice that your mind has taken you somewhere, it's fine. It's normal. It's to be expected. We try and have this attitude of non-judgment and openness and acceptance that that's going to happen. And when we notice it has happened, just very gently, persistently, we just keep going back to the next breath, starting again over and over. Just a few minutes left. Just really like to encourage you to keep persevering with this. No matter how many times you've got distracted or how long you got distracted. See if you can keep making that little effort to keep starting again over and over just for the last couple of minutes. Now I invite you to take a deep breath in and let it out. And just to expand the area of your attention beyond your breathing, allowing yourself to become aware of all the physical sensations of your body. You might notice the obvious ones, such as what you're sitting on. Just allow yourself to become aware of all of the subtle ones as well. From your toes, up your legs, your torso, your arms, your fingertips, your face. Just allowing yourself to pay attention, being aware of all of these sensations that are happening right now. take another deep breath in and let it out. And when you're ready, open your eyes and connect yourself back into the room. When I was in school, I learned a lot of things. I learned about geography and calculus and French verbs, German verbs, a bunch of historical dates. I even learned some Latin. But in my experience, when I was in school, there weren't a lot of classes on things that were actually going to be useful in life, like relationships, finances, or happiness. These like really important big things in life, or parenting. Anyway, when I left sort of the formal education system probably in about, I'm guessing 1991-ish. And it wasn't really until 1997 that psychology started to take an interest in studying this thing called happiness. So now if you went to school, you might actually be able to study it. And as I understand it, one of the most popular courses, since we're in quarantine, has been people are able to do these online courses in happiness offered by Yale, and I think University of California in Berkeley offers a course on happiness as well. So this happiness thing in 1997, what happened was a guy called Martin Seligman, who is probably self-described as a dyed-in-the-wool pessimist. He said he was almost like a nimbus cloud walking around the whole time. He got challenged by his daughter. She was 5 years old, and she threw a little bit of a fit, and then he'd said something, and she came down to the garden where he was and sort of said, "Oi, do you remember for my 5th birthday, I decided I would stop whining?" And he sort of vaguely remembers and sort of says, "Yeah." And she says, "Well, I did it, and that's the hardest thing I ever did. But if I can stop whining, you can stop being such a grump." And as a social scientist, he thought about that. And he wondered, is it true? Is it possible to stop being such a grump? And he decided to run for president of the American Psychological Association, which is one of the largest scientific bodies in America. And he ran on their platform that he wanted Psychology Association to start to study happiness more. Historically, they tended to focus on the pathologies of depression, schizophrenia, things like that. But they hadn't really focused on what makes somebody actually happy. In his words, they'd done quite a lot of work and had quite a lot of success in how do you take somebody maybe on a scale from like a -6 to a -2. So you can make somebody less miserable with drugs or interventions or various things like that. But they hadn't really studied how do you take somebody who's like a +2 and how do you make them a +7? What is this thing that everybody since Aristotle has been, and I'm sure before Aristotle, but Aristotle believed the purpose of life was that we were motivated by happiness. So they started doing all this scientific study, and they've discovered a lot. They've learned a lot. Hence, you can take these courses now on happiness. Now, from a meditation point of view, pretty much everything they found, in my opinion, but I may be biased, pretty much everything they've discovered can be helped by meditation in terms of happiness. But let's put this in slightly simpler terms than the way they put it. I think when it comes to happiness, there are really two aspects, two ways of looking at it perhaps. There are a whole bunch of things that it turns out can make you happier. Positive emotion, engagement, relationships, having a life of meaning, achievement, various things they've studied, and they go, yeah, okay, they can measure, do these things, and people's quality of life goes up. They feel better about their lives. They have more contentment, joy, well-being is the word the scientists like to use. So that's true. Okay, so there are a whole bunch of things that can generate higher levels of liking your life. But here's the thing. It's a bit like heating your house. If you try and heat your house, like let's say your house is really cold and you're trying to heat the house, you can bring in all the heaters you like You can bring in all the things to generate heat. But if there's a massive hole in your roof, it's not going to work. It doesn't make any difference. And so there really are two aspects of happiness. There are the things that create happiness. But if there are structural things in our lives or in our minds that are causing us misery, it pretty much doesn't matter what you do. And so I think there are two things we need to sort of look at. One is what makes us miserable, and as well as what makes us happy. One of the pieces of research that I think is most important in this is, it was done in about 2010 by a PhD student at Harvard called Matt Killingsworth. He was doing this under the tutelage of an extraordinary psychology professor called Daniel Gilbert. And it's known as the Killingsworth and Gilbert study, and you can look it up. You can call it Track Your Happiness, is the name of the study. And what they did was they produced this app that on people's phone, and it queried them at random points during the day. And they've done this across tens of thousands of people now. So it queried them at random points of the day, and it would ask them 3 questions. What are you doing? And it had in the original study, it had a whole bunch of categories, and you would choose, ranging from I'm at work, I'm watching TV, doing the dishes, I'm grocery shopping, I'm cleaning the house, commuting to work, making love, a whole bunch of different options. So what are you doing? And then, how much are you enjoying? How happy are you right now? How happy are you? And people range, like from 0 to 10. Pretty unhappy with it, very happy with it. And then the third question was, how focused are you on what you're doing? Are you focused, or are you distracted? Are you thinking about something else? And are you thinking about something else that's pleasant? Are you thinking about something else that's negative? Or are you thinking about something else that's just neutral? And they were trying to study this in order to try and understand, moment to moment in people's daily lives, moment to moment, what are the factors that make you happy? What's important? Is what you're doing relevant? Now, not surprisingly, it's a little bit relevant. Making love, people seem to enjoy, makes people happier than commuting to work. And so they got some data about, what is the relative happiness of what people do. And there is some relationship there. The really important piece of information from the study, though, was not the relationship between what you're doing and how happy you are. What was absolutely a correlation was how distracted you were, or how focused you were, to how happy you were. So no matter what you were doing, no matter what, whatever you were doing, if you were fully absorbed by that, no matter what it was, if you're fully absorbed by the activity, you are happier than if you're distracted, no matter. So if you're brushing your teeth and you're focused on brushing your teeth, you are happier than if you're distracted while you're brushing your teeth. And almost all of us are pretty distracted while brushing our teeth. Commuting to work, most of us are thinking about other things. We're not thinking about the commute, or we're not present with where we are. We're thinking about our lives or problems we've got to solve or whatever. But when we're focused in the moment, we're happier than when we're not focused. And this information is maybe useful. I think I'm trying to remember which magazine it was. I think it was Scientific American. You can look it up. You can just Google, a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. And it's the Killingsworth-Gilbert study, and it was written up. And basically what they said is, when your mind wanders, you're unhappy. And our mind is wandering almost 50% of the time. Almost 50% of the time, our mind is wandering. So we are less happy than we could be about 50% of the time. So the kind of message from this is, a wandering mind is actually quite useful for various things. It's useful for daydreaming. It's useful for thinking about possibilities, about what might be. It's useful for imagining different ideas, solutions to problems. We use it to try and anticipate what might go wrong in our lives, and to have some kind of plan in case things go wrong. So there is some value to the wandering mind. But the other truth is that it does not make us happy. The wandering mind is an unhappy mind. So this information basically says, yeah, be here now. That annoying phrase that has been said many, many times. Be present. Be here now. Turns out there's some truth to it. Like being fully present is a happier place to be. It's true. I find this information to be mostly useless, though. Because it's not easy to be present. We know. The moment we sit down to meditate, we say, okay, I'm going to be present. I'm going to be present with the breath. And what happens? Almost immediately, the mind wanders. So this information, this piece of advice that these psychologists have given us, saying, be here now. You want to be happier? Be present. Be here now. Because when your mind is wandering, you're going to be less happy. That information may be interesting, but without the skills of being able to be here now, it's just information. It's just saying, oh, okay, you're condemned to be less happy than you could be about 47% of the time, which is on average how often we're distracted. Without the skills to be able to notice where our mind is from moment to moment, that information is close to useless. Meditation is that training. When we meditate, when we do this funny little exercise, placing the attention on the breathing, noticing when we get distracted, and then putting our attention back on the breathing, we are training ourselves in this skill of moment to moment noticing where the mind is. This is the key factor in happiness. In any given moment, where is your mind? Are you fully engaged with what you're doing? Is your mind where you want it to be? And this is what we do. This is why it's such a valuable exercise. To notice, okay, where's my mind this moment? This breath, where is my mind? This breath, where is my mind? So noticing where the mind is, becoming more sensitive to noticing that it's taken us somewhere else, that we're not paying attention to what we're supposed to be paying attention to. Incredibly useful. And then the next piece, this is so helpful, so important. In the next piece, what we're doing is we're noticing where it is, and then we're practicing this skill of putting it back into the present. So we notice where it's gone, and then we put it back where we want it to be. Now, in and of itself, just doing the meditation makes people feel better. That's great. I'm all in favor of feeling better. But there's more going on here. We're also developing this incredibly important skill. So that's part of it. We'll get into the other part in the second half. But for now, let's do another meditation. So now you know why this exercise is so valuable. All I'm just going to ask you to do is just keep persevering, no matter how distracted your mind is. Every time you notice it's gone somewhere, and every time you take it back, even if it's just for a millisecond that you're back with the breath, every time you do that, you're developing a really important skill. And I know most of you just want to feel better right now. And you will. Just keep doing it, and you do feel better. But you're also developing a really important other skill. Okay. So, once again, sitting upright such that you're comfortable but not too comfortable. And take a nice deep breath in. And let it all the way out, completely emptying your lungs. And do that again. Nice deep breath in. But this time let it out very slowly. Forcing you to pay attention to the act of breathing itself. And one more time, nice deep breath in. And once again, let it out very slowly. Noticing any tension you're holding in your body, in your shoulders, in your hips, in your face. Just releasing it a little bit if you can. And then allowing your breathing to return to normal. And now placing the attention on the breathing. I want to make a small change to the previous meditation. There's a couple of options here, but we're going to just try and add an extra element in to perhaps help you notice your mind a little bit more quickly. So with the attention on the breath, as you breathe in and as you breathe out, just in your head count the number 1. And then with the next breath counting 2. Very slowly counting up to 10, and then when you get to 10, just start to count back down again to 1. If you don't like the counting, you can also do this exercise where as you breathe, each time you breathe out, just before you breathe in again, just check in with yourself. Go, am I focused? So whichever variation you like. The mind is still going to do what it does. It's still going to wander. And whenever it does, that's fine. It's absolutely okay and normal. Part of the value of this is noticing that your mind is taking your attention away. That's hugely valuable. And then the other thing that's really valuable is then putting your attention back over and over and over again, back on this breath. And we'll do this for about 10 minutes. We're about 3 minutes in, and just like to remind you to be very gentle with yourself. No matter how many times the mind wanders or how long you get distracted for, that's all part of the process. Just keep bringing yourself back to this breath. Just a few minutes left. Once again, encourage you, if you can, just to keep persevering with it. Keep making that little bit of effort to keep starting again every time you notice your mind went somewhere else. invite you to take a deep breath in and let it all the way out. And once again, just allow your attention to expand to include all the physical sensations in your body right now. Just resting in the awareness of your hands, your feet, your shoulders, your face. Just noticing that all of these sensations in your body, they're always only ever happening right now. So whenever you need to get grounded or centered in the present, you can always go to your body and just pay attention to the sensations. Take another deep breath in and let it out. And when you're ready, open your eyes and connect yourself back into your room. So, happiness. So I've talked a little bit about what makes us unhappy, the wandering mind. Meditation is the exact opposite of that. We are trying to learn to see our wandering mind and being able to have some kind of level of agency with it, that we don't automatically go where it goes. I mean, we do, but then we have the ability to see where it's taken us and bring it back. So that's pretty cool. So that's one aspect. There are two other aspects of the mind, and I've talked about this before, but every time I remember these two things, I find it helps. There are two other aspects of the mind that are really, really important to remember, to notice, to be able to pay attention to. And that is, your mind is amazing, but it is designed for your survival and not for your happiness. So it is messed up in two very specific ways. I mean, it might be messed up in more than these ways, but there are two ways that everybody's mind is screwed up, at least in regards to your happiness. They are good for survival, terrible for happiness. The first one of which is that we are built to be absolutely hypersensitive and hypervigilant about threats to our survival. That kind of makes sense. It's useful. We are always on the lookout for what might eat us, kill us, threaten us, all that kind of stuff. And that makes sense. If you think, 500,000 years ago, human beings weren't very high on the food chain. We, in terms of power and everything else, we were kind of like right in the middle. We really had to look out. Like everything was out to get us. And we didn't have any of the tools that we have today to protect us from our environment, from nature. So every little rustle in the grass, we would be hypersensitive to. The way I like to think about that is maybe there were two sets of people. There were the people who were happy-go-lucky. And they were kind of wandering around. They go, well, most of the time that rustle in the grass, it's nothing. And most of the time it is nothing. 99 times out of 100, maybe 999 times out of 1,000, it's nothing. So these people, they were probably right. Most of the time it's nothing. But that 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000, it turns out it's not a little chipmunk. It's a snake. And it's going to bite you. So the happy-go-lucky people, unfortunately, they all died out. So we are descended from people who are absolutely hypersensitive to threat because they're the ones that survived. So every time we have the choice between looking at what's right with a situation or what's wrong with a situation, the way our mind is programmed is our mind is programmed to look out for what's wrong, for what might go wrong, or what will go wrong. So that is where our mind spends an inordinate amount of time, is just focused on what's wrong. It turns out one of the most powerful and simplest exercises you can do to improve your happiness, other than meditation, of course. But anyway, what the scientists have found is this tiny little simple exercise you can do, and you can try this if you want, is every day, at the end of every day, write down 3 things that went well. I know it sounds like one of those normal gratitude lists, and it kind of is. There's one subtle difference to the exercise, is you write down what went well and why. Why was it a good thing? Now, it might be like, oh, today was a beautiful day. Why was it a beautiful day? Well, it was about bloody time. You can do whatever you like, but what it does is it forces you to at least acknowledge what are the 3 things that went well, because our habitual mind is only going to focus on the 9 things that went wrong. It's not going to focus on any of the things that went right unless we do an exercise to balance that out. So our mind, hypersensitive to what is wrong, what might go wrong, what will go wrong. That's fine for survival, terrible for happiness. Much better to try and have at least some balance. We're not talking like unicorns and rainbows and all that kind of stuff. We're just some balance so that we're not always focused on what's wrong. So that's one way the mind's messed up. The other way it's messed up is that it is perpetually dissatisfied. It is perpetually, no matter what's gone right, we get bored of it very, very quickly. And that makes sense. Again, there are people who 500,000 years ago, they were pretty happy-go-lucky. They thought, yeah, I think we got enough for the winter. We probably got enough. Well, probably. Optimistic. And then there were the people who, no matter how much they had, they were unhappy. They wanted more. Always wanting more. Never happy with what they had, wanting more. And, unfortunately, some really tough winter, they're the ones that survived. So once again, we are descended from people whose mind is oriented to no matter what you've got, you get dissatisfied with it very quickly and you want more. If people just from 200 years ago could see the quality of our lives today, they would be shocked. It would be everything they could have ever dreamed of. Clean water on demand, sewage systems. We have hot water. You turn on a tap, you get hot water. Even little things I was noticing, like liquid soap. Like I was frustrated yesterday. I ran out of washing up liquid. Not a big deal. I just, get another one. But it occurred to me, what did we do before washing up liquid? Well, I looked into it. Yeah, they use things like sand to scrub things. And bones of cuttlefish apparently is good as an abrasive. And then they came up with various basically solid soaps and detergents. But liquid soap wasn't really invented kind of until about 1900. But, so we've got all these things. We've got dishwashers, we've got washing machines, we have heating, we have air conditioning. We have the entire world's knowledge on this tiny little computer that we can hold in our hand. We can contact anybody. We can do video. We can do YouTube. We can do all of these things. So somebody from 200 years ago, if they'd have known that we had these things, they would have assumed we must be the most content people in history. But we're not. We're actually probably more miserable than we've been, at least since they've been measuring this. People are more miserable today than since they've been measuring, which is about the 1950s, I think. And by many measures, we're probably a lot more miserable than we were 100 years ago, in spite of all of these things. And part of it is that no matter what we've got, yes, you get a new phone. You go, oh, I got a new phone. It's so good. And there is a moment of pleasure. There is a moment of enjoyment. But we are programmed for that moment not to last. We're programmed to be dissatisfied very quickly. And as soon as there's a new phone, we're like, oh, my phone's not as good as their phone. My car's not as good. It's not as new as somebody else's. Look at somebody else's house. You go, oh, their house is nicer than my house. We are programmed to be permanently dissatisfied. Once you know that you're programmed to be constantly on the lookout for what's wrong, and you're programmed to constantly be dissatisfied with what you have, once you know that, you have some agency with it. The thing is, there are thousands of people telling you what you should buy, what you should wear, what you should eat, how much you should exercise, where you should go on holiday, whether you should wear a face mask or not wear a face mask. There are thousands and thousands of messages and thousands of voices from our family, our friends, our media, our culture. All of these different people have opinions about how we should be living our lives. And I hope for the most part we have some kind of ability to filter what we hear and decide what we're going to take on board and what we're not going to take on board, based on whether we trust these people, whether we think they're reliable, what their agenda is, all these kinds of things. But there's one voice that's quite difficult to ignore, because we've been trained our whole lives to listen to it. Be true to yourself. But what happens if yourself is wrong? When your mind is orienting yourself to what's wrong with your life, or your mind is orienting yourself to be dissatisfied with what you have and wanting more, permanently wanting more, if you're listening to that voice, you're going to be miserable. It's going to make you miserable. You'll be well equipped for the next ice age, probably, but in the meantime, you will be miserable if you're always looking at what's wrong, what might go wrong, what will go wrong. Now, some of that's fine, some of that's helpful, some of that's useful, but to permanently be in that state, miserable. To permanently be dissatisfied with what you have, to be permanently comparing yourself to other people and going, oh, I think they're happier than I am. It turns out, these two aspects of our mind are incredibly damaging to our well-being. That's all good to know. But unless, again, you are training yourself in learning to notice your mind, to be able to see your mind. The word meditation in Tibetan, it means becoming familiar. We are becoming familiar. One of the things we're becoming familiar with our mind, so that we can see it doing its thing. We can see it when it decides to take us down that track of, oh, my life is not as good as it should be. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't try and improve your life. That's fine. Of course it is. It's helpful and useful, and in many cases it's important. But the tendency to be perpetually dissatisfied is why it doesn't matter, to a certain extent, how much money you make. I mean, let's put that in a little bit of terms. I'm jumping ahead of myself slightly here. Some money is helpful. There's no doubt. Money can buy you happiness, or at least it can avoid unhappiness. More money you make, a little bit more happy you make. But it doesn't keep going on ad infinitum. It turns out that if you have basically what you need, if you can cover your needs, you're not going to get any happier. And that minimum, to get 95% of the happiness available from money, you need about $75,000 a year. Now, $75,000 a year is quite a lot. It's more than 80% of Americans make, for example. But it is not rich. Jeff Bezos, with all his billions, is not billions of times happier than somebody making $75,000 a year, or even somebody making $60,000 a year. He might be a little bit happier. He definitely has probably more options available to him. He might live a more interesting life. Who knows? But in terms of happiness, it's not a correlation of how much money he makes. So anyway, I got off track slightly. So the money thing, our circumstances in life, the nature of your house, it's very easy for us to think, oh, if I had a bit more, then I'd be happy. I have this, absolutely have this. It's in my bones. It doesn't matter how much I read. It doesn't matter how much I know that more is not going to make me happy. Deep in my soul, there is a voice that says, no, Justin, you just need a little bit more. If you just had a little bit more money, then you'd be happier. If you had a bit more, Yeah, okay, so you've got however many people watching you on YouTube. But if you had more people, then you'd be happier. If you had 1,000,000 people, then you'd be blissfully happy. Now, I know that's not true. I absolutely know that. Intellectually, I know that's not true. I've seen the data. I know it's not true. I don't really need any more money. I'm not rich, but I have enough. I have enough. I can do this kind of thing. I have enough. But I still, deep inside me, there's this voice. You need more. You need more. If you had more, then you'd be happy. If you had more, then you'd be happy. This voice is not going to go away. It's part of our programming. It's just wrong. And if we listen to it, we're going to make ourselves miserable. So, there are these aspects of the mind. A wandering mind, the fact that we catastrophize and we're always focused on what's wrong, and the fact that we're always dissatisfied. These things make us miserable. And meditation is the fantastic antidote to these things, to be able to see our mind, to notice it, to learn about it, become familiar with it. That's what we're doing in meditation. We're starting to be able to see that voice inside our heads as just another voice. Sometimes it's worth paying attention to. Sometimes it's no better than what you'd pick up at the local bar in terms of opinions and ideas and advice. So we're learning to be able to distinguish this voice, and it's not truth. It's just a voice. It's just an opinion. And once you can see that, then it doesn't have power over you. Then you have the ability not to make yourself miserable. So that's 3 big holes in the house, if you like. If you can plug those 3 holes, then any of the science that tells you how to generate happiness, then it becomes valuable. But we need to block the holes that are making us miserable all the time. So that's part of it. Then, yeah, sure, the science then does, just checking the time. The science does then actually offer a whole bunch of stuff. So there's a bunch of information, like the money thing. Some money, yeah, it does make a difference up to a certain point. And then beyond that point, it doesn't really make any difference. And that point is a lot lower than we think it is. Like a lot of us think, oh, if I have $1 million, then I'll be happy. If I have $10 million, then I'd be really happy. Or if I could just fly in first class, then I'd be happy. Or if I had a private jet, then I'd be happy. You're programmed to think those things. It's not true. You need what you need. You do need a certain amount. And then above that, it's not going to make a difference. Even though part of you will always believe that to be true. So they found that out about money. Some, yeah, it's good. Beyond that, no. There's a bunch of stuff about marriage. Turns out there's a couple of weird statistics about marriage. Generally, people who are married are happier. But there are 2 life events that cause a big uptick in happiness. One is marriage. Big uptick in marriage, big uptick in happiness, and it does eventually sort of degrade back down to sort of baseline, but there's a big uptick when people get married. And then the other one is divorce. Divorce tends to make people a lot happier too. That's pretty weird, but of course, it's always in the nuance of these scientific research that it's kind of important. A good marriage, no surprise, makes people happier. People are happier. Bad marriage, people are really miserable. And then if they do eventually get divorced, uptick, happier. So, in the detail, it's kind of nuanced. Generally, marriage, yeah, better, but they're not sure it's causative. It might just be that happier people get married. And you can see that. Really, you don't really want to marry somebody who's like depressed all the time. So maybe they don't really know with the data. I'm still a bit confused about that. What they do seem to know is these 5 factors. I think it's 5. Yeah, 5 factors. So there's what's known as positive emotion, which is what we most associate with things like pleasure, which is comfort, warmth, things you enjoy doing, like circumstantial stuff that makes you feel better. Good food, drinking, lying on a beach, various things like this that cause us to feel pleasure. Yes, okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff like that, yeah, that makes you happier. But what they've also noticed is it tends to be very short-lived, partly because we get dissatisfied very quickly, but also partly just the nature of it. Like you have a piece of apple pie and you like apple pie and you have the apple pie and it's wonderful and you go, oh, I love apple pie. And you have 3 or 4 or 5 slices. It doesn't work. More slices doesn't make you happier. It actually makes you very ill. So there's a satiation factor with a lot of this positive emotion stuff. And the other thing is, if you just go from hedonistic moment to hedonistic moment, seeking pleasure the entire time, there'll be a lot of pleasure, short-lived. And at the end of the day, you'll probably notice that there's kind of an emptiness. There's more to well-being than just pleasure and this raw happiness. It's why a lot of scientists don't like the word happiness. They prefer well-being, because happiness kind of connotes this just like feeling good all the time. And feeling good all the time is not really the whole what we're looking for. There's more stuff. One of them is engagement, what they call engagement or flow. And that is this being fully present in the moment. Any activity that has you fully absorbed, fully engaged, that's a state where people are generally happier. It's those states where you might be reading a book and you're fully absorbed by the book and it feels good. Like you, yourself, has gone away. You are fully absorbed by the story. And all you can do is you just keep turning the pages. That's great. If you're watching a really good movie that has your attention fully, it's great. It feels good at the end of the movie. No matter what happened in the movie, whether it was a sad movie, exciting movie, happy ending, sad ending, no matter what, if it held your attention completely, that's good. Sudoku or doing the crossword or any of these things where they hold our attention fully. It turns out there's a whole bunch of activities whereby we have to focus, like there's a difficulty level. If you're doing something that's sufficiently difficult that you have to fully engage and fully concentrate, then that's enjoyable. And then, of course, unfortunately, as time goes on, you might get more skillful at it, at which point you have to raise the difficulty level. But anyway, so there's this whole aspect of engagement and flow, which is pretty much all that meditation is about, is like learning how to be fully absorbed in the moment. Anyway, so that's the second one. Third one, relationships. Turns out we are very social creatures, probably for very good, again, evolutionary reasons. When we are with other people, when we're building those connections and bonds of trust and people that we can relate to, people that respect us, that we respect, where there's a give and take, that friendship with families or people we know, colleagues, that's incredibly important. Time spent with those types of people, creating those connections, very valuable. And that was what we talked about last week, was how meditation can really help you with that, help build these bonds, really powerful bonds of connection. Fourth one, meaning. Like a life of meaning, a life of purpose. A life where we are doing something, we are engaged in an activity which we believe is bigger than ourselves. So it's not just for us, we're moving towards something larger than ourselves. A life of meaning has tremendous uptick in overall well-being. And again, meditation, big factor here. We're learning how, in the loving kindness meditation, as we learn to be kinder to ourselves, we're uncovering this innate capacity of generosity, love, kindness towards others. And as we develop this skill and practice this skill, the science is pretty unequivocal. We feel better when we are engaged in a life of meaning, a life of purpose, doing something more than ourselves. And that's where just, pleasurable pursuits or doing the crossword, while they can be pleasurable in the moment, a fuller life, we do require this aspect of meaning and purpose. And the last piece that they've got to so far, and the model, they're still very early on in their research, but the last piece is this piece around achievement, is that sometimes setting ourselves big goals, big, difficult things, might be just cleaning out the garage, but it might be climbing a mountain, it might be writing a book, it might be doing all sorts of things, or trying to improve our tennis game or our golf game or something. Anything where there is a goal. Achievement of these goals can be very pleasurable just for the fact of the achievement. There's also an element of engagement with this. When something is very difficult and it requires all our skills, then that takes our full engagement. So there's an overlap with some of these. But anyway, that's some of the things that add to happiness in life. So long as you've like blocked up all the other things. Now, it's not a complete list. Science is still young. They're still doing a lot more. But those are some of the things that can improve happiness. So, and I think meditation helps with all of those things, of course, and I am biased, I realize. But okay, let's even take the achievement thing. If you look at many of the highest achievers in our society, they meditate. Now, they get a lot out of this achievement thing. They enjoy this achievement thing. And what they've noticed is that meditation helps them with this achievement thing. And we'll be looking at a little bit more of that in week 11. Like, why does meditation help with performance and achievement? So meditation can help stop being unhappy once we start to see our mind and learn our mind. It can also help with all of the aspects of our lives, or aspects of life that can improve well-being. So that's why meditation is so helpful. In fact, I think it's critical. The only other thought I'd like to share with you is in medicine, or even in science, when they're looking at problems that people have, there are sort of two ways that they might address a problem. One is to try and cure the problem. So an example that's given sometimes is that, let's just say you have an infection. You have a bacterial infection. You can take antibiotics and that will kill the bacteria that's causing you whatever illness you've got, whatever the infection is. So that antibiotic cures the problem. Then there are a whole bunch of treatments. They don't cure the problem, but they can manage the problem. So for example, antidepressants. They don't cure the depression, but they can manage it. They can treat it. They can make it less severe in some cases. So that's an example of a treatment. And the question that occurred to me is meditation a cure or is meditation a treatment? Now, I think it's both. Now, I know it's a treatment. I know it's an incredibly effective treatment for all the reasons we've talked about. Like our mind is messed up and meditation can help us deal with that aspect of it. Meditation, there are all these ways in which it can actually improve happiness. But I know from my own personal experience that when I'm meditating, I'm happier. When I stop meditating, or if I'm meditating for less time because I get distracted or I'm just not paying as much attention to it, I get more miserable. So I know from my personal experience, it's an incredibly effective treatment for this well-being thing. It works for me. I know the science, but I know from personal experience it works for me. And I also know, just the stories from millions of people. Millions of people find this meditation thing helpful around happiness as a treatment. I believe it can also be a cure. Now, not for very many people, but for some people. And that's just a personal belief. But there have been examples throughout history of some people who have found like ways of actually reprogramming their brains. So throughout history, there have been examples of this, but even today, it's not just stories about like great people from history and we have some myth about the Buddha and he sat under the bo tree and he sort of had this moment of enlightenment and then there was no more suffering. There are definitely myths and stories in the histories of this, but we have people today on this planet right now who've been measured by science and their brains work differently than ours. And they've had moments where all of a sudden they are able to see their mind and not be controlled by it, not be held in the thrall of mistaken beliefs and opinions. From the East, there are various people like Guru Ma is one, Mother Mira is another. I think she's based in Germany. I'm going to get his name, butcher his name completely, but there's Mingyur Rinpoche is a Tibetan who has this extraordinary awareness and has written these extraordinary books And just being with him, or even just being with him on the internet, can be quite an experience. But there are also, it's not just an Eastern thing, there are Westerners. I would throw out that people like Eckhart Tolle, I think, have genuinely had some kind of experience whereby their mind is now working differently. They are not subject to suffering in the same way we are. There's an American teacher from Mississippi. I think she now lives, in the Northwest somewhere. She goes by the name of Gangaji. And I've sat with her, and she is clearly, just being in her presence is a whole different experience. Byron Katie, who didn't get to where she got to through meditation at all, although she has now talked a lot about this experience of meditation and how valuable it is to spend time being still. She did it just through self-inquiry. But she had some moment of awakening, and she doesn't work the same way as everybody works now. And just being in her presence, allegedly, I haven't sat with her, but allegedly sitting with her. And there's another guy who used to be an emergency room doctor. I think he's in Alabama, named called Daniel Ingram. So there are these, and his brain has been watched under all sorts of microscopes and fMRI machines and everything else. It doesn't work the same as ours. And from him, it was just hard work. He just worked. He was a doctor, and he says getting to that state was difficult. It was very difficult. But it wasn't as difficult as going to medical school, for example. And lots of people graduate from medical school. Getting to where he's got to in his mind, this realization, this awakening, as it's often described as. Now, I'm not there. I haven't got there. So I don't know about this. But I've seen them. I've seen some of them, met some of them, and I believe it. And I've had moments as well, I've glimpses to make me believe that this is doable, this is possible. But I know it works as a treatment. I believe it works as a cure. Okay. Enough talk. Meditation makes you happier. Let's do a new kind of meditation. Specifically because it's a different type of meditation and it does something different to the psyche, to the consciousness. I don't know how it works. So I don't want you to think too much about it, because I've thought about it a lot and I still don't know how it works. I just think it does. And it's a different type. And it's not better than the other ones. It's just different. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to focus on 3 parts of your body. Some people call this chakra meditation. You can look that up if you like, but it doesn't matter whether you know about chakras or you don't know about chakras. That's totally irrelevant, actually. The only thing is just to place your attention on these parts of the body. Now, the first one I'm going to ask you to do, and each of these we're going to do for 4 minutes. First 4 minutes, I want you to just, right now perhaps, just put a finger about 1 inch below your belly button. So just put a little bit of pressure there. And all I want you to do is just to pay attention to that spot. And if the only way you can do that is by putting your finger there, that's fine. Just put your finger there. And all you're going to do is just place your attention there for 4 minutes. It's a little bit like focusing on the breathing. You might focus on the breathing and just be aware and trying to place your attention on the breathing. In this, we're just trying to place our attention on that spot. And you might be tempted to think, oh, is this working? Is this not working? All that stuff. If I can offer you one piece of advice, don't go there. Just ignore that stuff. Just place your attention there, because whatever works is not happening in the level of the mind that would notice this working. This level of the mind that notices that kind of stuff, that's not what we're dealing with here. So to the extent that this works, it doesn't work consciously. It works somewhere else. Works in somewhere else, I don't know. So we're just going to place our attention on that part of the body for the second 4 minutes, right in the middle of your chest. So traditionally, I think the way you'd find this spot is you raise your left index finger with your eyes closed, touch yourself in the middle of your chest and say me. And wherever that spot is, that's where I want you to place your attention for the second 4 minutes. And for the last 4 minutes, between your eyebrows and just slightly above. And again, if it helps to put your finger there to be able to focus on that spot, that's fine. Now, some of you who've been to my classes know that traditionally I usually do this to music, and I know many of you have said, please can we do it to the music? And I apologize, we're not going to do it to the music, but only because YouTube has very strict rules about playing music with copyright and stuff, and I have not worked out how to get around that yet. And I don't want to cheat or anything else, but if I get the copyrights, I don't know how to tell YouTube that I've got the copyrights. Anyway, I'm going to work on that, but for now, I don't have the music. Sorry about that. So for now, we're just going to place our attention on there. If you have a mantra and you are familiar with mantra meditation, I will invite you to say your mantra while you're placing your attention on this spot. If you don't have a mantra, what I'm going to ask you to do is just very simply, when you're placing your attention on these spots, just use that sort of yoga expression. I'm just going to ask you to say Om. It doesn't mean anything. We're not creating a religion, not making you into a Hindu or anything like that. There's something about the repetition of a phrase or a word that does something to the consciousness. And we're coupling that with placing our attention on these parts of the body. So for the first one, placing our attention on that spot just below the belly button. And just repeating your mantra over and over again. And I invite you to do it slowly with some pause in between. So you might just say the mantra on the out breath. So as you're breathing out in your mind, just saying Om. You might do it on the out breath and on the in breath. So it might be Om on the in breath as you breathe in, and then Om on the out breath as you breathe out. And then we'll do the same in the middle of the chest and the same between the eyebrows and slightly above. So we're going to run slightly over. I hope that's okay. But just invite you to take your seat such that you're comfortable but alert. And take a nice deep breath in. And let it all the way out. And allow your breathing to return to normal. Just settling your attention on the breath to start with. Noticing this breath right now. And if your mind is racing and you're thinking about what I've said or thinking about the meditation, see if you can just start to let that go. Just relax and rest into your awareness of your breath. And now moving your attention to that spot about 1 inch below your belly button. And just start quietly repeating your mantra or the phrase Om. And when you notice the mind is just racing and taking you away somewhere else, that's fine again. Just see if you can keep going back to that spot on your body and your mantra. Like I said, we'll just do this for 4 minutes. So now we're going to move focus back up to the middle of the chest. If it helps to put your finger there, that's fine. Try not to think too much about this. Just keep persevering with the exercise of noticing that spot, placing your attention on that spot, letting everything else go. At the same time, just quietly repeating your mantra to yourself over and over. So now we're going to move our attention up to the space just above our eyebrows, right in the middle of the forehead, just about an inch above your eyebrows. And again, if it helps to put the finger there, that's absolutely fine. We're just placing our attention there and then repeating the mantra over and over. And of course the mind is going to do what it does as normal, but when you notice that's happened, again, just be very gentle with yourself and just bring your attention back to that spot, repeating your mantra. And I invite you to take a deep breath in and let it all the way out. Just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, get back in touch with your body. Just like to invite you to transition out of the meditation rather gently. No matter what happened, whether you found moments of stillness or you didn't. Nevertheless, just be a little gentle with yourself as you transition from a meditative state back into the rest of your evening. So just noticing your body, your breathing, any sounds you can hear in the room around you. And when you're ready, open your eyes and connect yourself back into your room. So week 9, happiness, or well-being is how the scientists would like us to talk about it. Just keep meditating. But at least you know now some of the why. I don't think that's all of the why, but that's some of the why of what's going on and why meditation is so helpful. I have a request for you all, but I don't necessarily want to sully the evening by asking for anything, but I need your help. But just in case the moment I say that, some of you are immediately suspicious and you don't want to ruin your evening of meditation, completely understand. And totally thank you very much for your attention. Thanks for joining. Thanks for making this weird virtual social experience that we've been doing. And maybe you can log in and see what it is I'm asking for at another time. But if you're checking out now, thank you so much. And if you're sticking with me to hear what I need and what I could use some help with, thank you. Thanks for sticking around. I need some help. We've been doing this for a while now, doing on and off, I guess, been doing the in-person ones and these ones for a few years now. And some people have been saying to me, Justin, you need to reach more people. I'm like, it reaches the people it needs to reach. And they're like, no, this is good. There's a lot of rubbish out there about meditation. This is good. You need to get this into the hands of more people. I'm like, more is not better. Here I am trying really hard not to buy into this idea. More is better. Like, no, more is not better. And some people have been saying, Justin, stop playing small. Get this into more hands. Well, I sort of naively thought, oh, well, I just put it on the internet and whoever gets it, gets it. And I'm really glad that you've got it. And I'm really glad that some people have got it. And I hope you found it of value. And I'm guessing, since you're on week 9 and you're still listening, that you found this of some value. So my goal is to try and get this to let more people know about this. So marketing. So I want you to help with my marketing. There's 3 things I think you can do. The first is, probably the most important, is if you find this of value, please tell other people. Share my posts on Facebook. Let people know. Write stuff. Just people you talk to, or maybe just post something yourself on Facebook. And just say, you've been doing this program. It's free. It's really helpful. And tell them why. Tell people why you find it helpful. So word of mouth is probably the single biggest factor in terms of who has shown up in the past to these classes, is because people have said, maybe many of you have, somebody said, oh, you should try this class. Now, it's not for everybody, but if you tell people and they check it out, and it won't be for everybody, but for some people it will be, and it'll be helpful for them. So if you can just share stuff, let people know about this, that would be incredibly helpful. Second piece, the money. Now, as soon as you mention money, I don't know about you, my back goes up. I'm like, I knew there was a catch. Well, Yeah, there is and there isn't. I mean, you don't have to do anything here, but since I've started this, some people have actually been sending me money randomly without being asked. There's a donate button on the website and they've been clicking on it and sending money. And I'm incredibly appreciative of that on the one hand, but also slightly confused because I didn't really know what to do with it. It kind of felt like special money, and I could have just put it in the expenses and it would help. That's definitely true. But instead, what I've decided to do, I think people have donated about $385 so far. And so I've decided that I'm going to match every dollar that's donated between now and the end of the course, so in about a month's time. I will match every dollar. So 385 donated so far, so I'll match that. So we're up to about $770, if my maths is correct. We're up to about $770, and that's great. And if we only raise $770, that's fine. What I'm going to do with it is I'm just going to take all that money and just do some marketing, which probably means buying Facebook ads or doing various things, putting Google keywords and doing some stuff. Maybe hiring a little marketing firm to do some adverts somewhere. Not entirely sure where. It slightly depends on how much money we raise. It'll be something between Facebook ads, and if we raise enough money, we can do a Super Bowl ad. I'm not expecting to do a Super Bowl ad, but every dollar, probably up to some limit because I'm not super rich, but maybe I think I'll match the first $5,000 that's donated. I don't expect to raise $5,000, but if it would be nice if we raise more than $5,000. Who knows? Somebody might write a big check or something. I will match up to the first $5,000, and then we're just going to dedicate that to marketing. So if you think this has been of value and this should be in more people's hands, and you can afford it, and you're motivated to, and you're moved to, send me some money. The address, I think, is on the bottom of the any email I've sent out. Or if it's not, then you can also, there's the donate button on the website, or you can get in touch by email and send a check if that's how you'd rather do it. Any of those things. Any dollar will go exclusively to marketing. Nobody in this organization gets paid, and everything's been financed through private contributions so far. But anything donated during this course will go for a marketing project to try and let more people know about this so that more people can do this. The third way you can help is let me know how you think I should do this marketing, because I don't know anything about marketing. Now, I will try and put together the best plan I can, and I'm going to get advice from good people. But if any of you know anything about marketing, please get in touch. Help me. Point me in the right direction. I have some contacts that I'm going to reach out to and try and find out more about this, how not to waste the money. But if you know anything, let me know. Please get in touch. And if you just have opinions or ideas or thoughts, please get in touch and let me know. So any of those three. Let people know. Send me some money if you're moved to, but please don't if you're not. It's not a big deal. And if you know anything about this marketing thing, please let me know. Anyway, thank you for sticking with me through that. And thank you for all your support, for sticking through the 9 weeks and being in this position of, I think, really helping yourself, but also helping the world with this meditation thing. I really believe that. And I hope it does make you happier and feel better and all that kind of stuff. But there's a bigger picture here as well. Everything, I think, helps everybody else too. So thank you. I will be back here 8:30 tomorrow morning for daily meditations, and then we will do week 10, same time, same place next week. In the meantime, have a great week, everybody, and thank you so much for your attention.